This is just a great example of all of us having to adjust on the fly these days and being a bad plan carried out violently.
All right, so this is how the Irish have saved civilization once again. This is Seamus. Take it away, Seamus. He's going to show us how the Irish saved civilization while we were all sheltering in place.
It must be Guinness, right?
No.
Okay, that moment was brought to you by the Irish. We just need a little, somehow need a little bit of joy and a little bit of laughter in our mornings to get us started.
It's so true. Yesterday, I wasted, well, to be honest, probably an hour and a half just chasing down quarantine songs, people who wrote songs or did parodies of other songs. It's incredible creativity, I think, and for people to pump these out so quick. So people are finding ways to alleviate. I saw group Zoom orchestras being put together.
Yeah.
It was just astounding, and actually did a pretty darn good job for not being in the same room. So
we have new people joining us today, and you might be wondering, why did we call it the Rising Phoenix Business Community? And so if you remember the mythical story, or you might want to look it up after, about the phoenix, that they live about, it's a mythical bird that lives about 100 years. And then around that mark, it actually goes into this, kindling nest and is burned up and emerges as something fabulous and new. And it certainly feels like that right now, right? Like a lot of the things that we've been used to are crumbling and certainly changing. And so we want to be like that rising phoenix, and we want to emerge as thriving, and it's a time of rebirth and a time of creativity, a time to reinvent ourselves. So wanted to remind you again of why we're rising phoenixes. I guess we all need to just, do that.
Here's a quick rundown of a format of this show today. First, we're going to offer a couple of visionary and inspirational stories, and then we're going to interview some people who've been knocked down or shut out and have figured out a way not only to move forward, but to thrive in this challenging environment. And then we're going to move into what we call bottleneck segments. A couple of you may have an issue that you can't figure out on your own. You feel like you're in a valley with no outlet, and you need some help. And last week we had several people present their challenges, opportunities, and possibilities. And it was the wisdom of the crowd, who offered some insight without knowing a whole bunch about the business, that really led to a real breakthrough for some of those folks. And then today we're going to have a special segment on how to get help, especially financial help in this market. And Chuck has been doing a lot of study on sorting out all the stuff that's coming out of Washington and from the banks. And he's going to help us cut through some of the red tape so we can lay hold of cash in this moment and not only stay alive, but again, move forward. Then we're going to ask our guest, you again, to share a blinding flash of the obvious. That is, we call it a BFO, from your experiences on the show, that it's one takeaway, one thing you want, aha, yeah, I can put that to use, or yeah, I can get off the couch and take some steps today. And then we'll end with a quick reminder to apply what we've learned. And Sandy will close us with just a little bit about our need for community. And we always like to finish all of our meetings with an inspirational quote. So that's how we're going to proceed. Chuck,
Thank you, Tom. Yeah, let's get it started. Yeah, there's just so much negative news out there. It's just overwhelming. And we need happy stuff. We need some things to balance that, which is why we threw the Seamus on there and how the Irish saved civilization. And we just need some moments. And I think the reason we do this Monday mornings is because it's a time for us to get moving again, even though some of us didn't stop this week. I buried myself the last 4 days straight from sun up to bedtime, learning about how do we fund ourselves going forward. We're going to talk about that later. But I just wanted to start us off with a challenge and a question that's been really helpful to me. Here's the question for the day. Am I running away from something or am I running towards something? People moving towards something are much more successful than people moving away from something. If you want to stop being an alcoholic, you don't sit around focusing on, I don't want to be an alcoholic anymore. That's a good way to stay an alcoholic. You want to focus on, what am I running toward that doesn't have alcohol in it? And you're much more likely to get out of it. Run towards something you want badly, not away from something you are afraid of. And right now, we're all running away in some ways. I know I am, and all of us are running away from things that are bad. And we've got to refocus ourselves and figure out, what am I running toward? Because if you're running away from something that's bad, it will eventually catch you. It will suck you back in. If you're running towards something that's good, it's much more highly motivating. And there's good research on that. A study of severe heart attack victims called Change or Die about 10 years ago by Alan Deutschman. When they faced the fear of early death, 90% of them went back to the same bad lifestyle. There were people trying to show them greasy hearts and bad livers and early death and all that stuff to scare them straight. And they were running away from an early death. And 90% of them went back to the same bad lifestyle that they had that would assure that they die early. Running away from an early death wasn't a strong motivation. Dean Ornish, founder of the Preventative Medicine Research Institute, he took a very different approach. And at the time was pretty radical. He ignored the fear of death. And he focused instead on helping heart attack victims find the joy of living. Let's show them a future with grandchildren and with health and being able to do things. And he gave them something to run toward, not away from, and got them to change everything at once, radically. Let's stop where we were and let's get going in a new direction, not in tiny increments. And in an astonishing 77% of the people who worked with him on this changed their lives permanently. So he went from 90% going back to what they used to know and falling back into the old habits because they were running away from something, versus 77% changing their lives permanently because they were running towards something. I think this is a great quote from him. Joy is a more powerful motivator than fear. Isn't that great? Joy is a more powerful motivator than fear. What do we need to change radically? What do you need to run toward today? Let's all figure that out. I think one of the things we need to run toward is, we're all startups again. Remember when it was fun? You were excited about starting your business. You didn't know what you were doing. You didn't know where you were going. You weren't sure who your clients would be, if your products were actually going to sell. We're kind of in that mode again. And I think we need to grieve the loss of where we came from. And then we need to run toward the joy of figuring this out. How do I move forward in a changing world? So let's ask that question. Am I running away from something or I'm running towards something? And let's find something to run toward and get that visual and run toward that the rest of this week. Tom, back to you. I don't hear you. Are you on mute?
Just couldn't get our mute button to work for a second. Sorry about that. Thanks very much, Chuck. Jan, it's, gosh, that has to be our mantra right now. What are we running towards? I spend a few minutes every day catching up on the news, and I got to shut off the outpouring of bad statistics and how many more people are dying around us, because it just sucks the life out of me. So I've shifted and started looking for good stories about breakthrough, because in the midst of this crush, and I'm just going to tell you, life sucks right now. It's really hard. Everything has changed. Normal is gone. We're creating new normal every day. I don't know about you. And anybody else finding that all the norms are just out of reach? But in the midst of this, good things are happening. I just a quick note: Dyson, the people who have the super vacuum cleaners and the fans, in 10 days came up with an inexpensive way to create respirators and breathing tubes. You don't know what I'm talking about. Help me here. Fairly inexpensive to create, and they can start pumping them out. They're just waiting for approval. So, when we get our heads geared towards something rather than away from something, we can create. Here's a little bit of a historic story. 1927, Dr. Julius Wagner Jurg won a Nobel Prize for pyrotherapy, which is probably one of the coolest names of anything in medicine. He went on to save tens of thousands of lives because this was before antibiotics. And during that time, syphilis was a scourge. I mean, people were dying left and right. There was no cure for it, but there was a cure for malaria. Here's the interesting thing. The bacteria that caused syphilis really doesn't like heat, dies off very quickly. Meanwhile, malaria causes high fevers. So guess what he did? You can probably put 2 + 2 together. He introduced them, infected them, syphilis patients with malaria. The high fever killed off the syphilis. Then he went on to treat the malaria, and the patient recovered from both.
That's awesome.
Isn't that wild? So they don't have near the science and discoveries and technology we do today. So I just want to challenge each of you to think about, what do I need to do to shift? What do I need to do to think outside my traditional box and outside my norm? And we're going to introduce a couple of people who are doing that right now. So Sherry, are you on? If you could unmute yourself. Sherry Rivers.
I'm on.
Hey, Sherry. Thanks so much for joining us. Sherry's the CEO of a private practice, River Therapies, which also includes River Pediatric Therapies, River School Therapies, and River Concussion Institute. A lot of us can use that, who serve over 1,200 patients a week in over 7 counties in the Western Pennsylvania region. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
You betcha.
Sherry, it's just calming to look at all that ocean blue in the background.
Oh, I'm glad you like that teal. I was wondering if it's a little outdated now, but.
So Sherry, in this segment, we love to talk to people who have hit the wall because of government regulations or shutdowns or, quarantine or whatever, and have figured out a way to move forward. So can you tell us a little, what did you run into first? What was the challenge?
Well, because we treat patients face to face. So when the shutdown occurred, it hit me really hard. I pretty much had to redesign my company within 24 hours. And I am not one to sit back and kind of wait and see. I am more of an aggressive type nature and just jump in and figure this out ahead of the curve. So we turned my face-to-face therapy one-on-one practice into telemedicine pretty much overnight.
Wow. Where did that idea come from?
Well, it was really cool because leading up to March 16th, I believe the Thursday before that, one of my patients was already afraid to come into the office because of the coronavirus. So she asked me to do one session with her child through Zoom. And so we piloted it. So within 2 hours, we had the parent request. We piloted it. And then after that was done, I started training my staff the rest of Thursday and Friday, just experimenting. And even though there was not an order in place to stop services, because I am an essential service, I wanted to be prepared in case it led that way. So we started training our staff and getting them on board. But the hardest part to get this going was convincing therapists who are extremely passionate about what they do and how they do it and how they deliver their services to understand that we needed that framework, like what you just talked about, running towards something instead of away from something. I needed to shift all of my staff's thinking into a position where they could run towards a new method of delivering services. Once I got them on board, and information, how to be successful, all kind of fell into place.
That's awesome. Well done. And talk about creating a new norm. I mean, you're certainly doing it. I'm hoping it's out and inspires other people who are in the people support industry like yourself, and maybe they'll be inspired to make that shift as well, rather than just shutting down. Because holy cow, do people need what you're offering today?
And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm just saying, I think it'd be great if you wanted to email us at grow3to5club.com, and if there's any tips that you might give any of us around empathy and self-care and continuing to move on, and if there's anything you wanted to give us some tips that we might help others with, that'd be wonderful.
One of the things we're piloting today at 2:00 is we're going to be doing a free support group with a licensed social worker. We have a separate class that's 30 minutes for adults, for teens, and elementary students. So today's our first day. So, we are providing that, and anyone can just go on. It's through Zoom. I just need email sent to me. So I don't know if anyone here is interested in getting that support group together, involved or grandkids. You can just send me an email, and then I'll add you to our invite. But I definitely have seen hope. And once I could just convince my therapist and my staff that we were going to work through this together and we were not closing our doors, that we would continue on, then it seemed like all the avenues to deliver these services have opened up to us by them now going out and researching new ways to help these children that desperately need it.
That's awesome. Hey, would you mind throwing whatever contact information in the chat box, or
Yes.
so that if people want to join you on that group? That sounds like an incredible offering. Thanks so much for opening that up to people.
Yeah, or if they need a therapist, they can contact you because everything's virtual. So there you go.
Right. We can serve the whole country now. So see how that opens up new doors.
Up all your opportunity.
That's right.
Sherry, thanks so much again for joining us today. Inspirational story, and we sure appreciate how you're kind of leading the country. So you go.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. We're going to shift now to Joe Oltman. Joe, are you on with us?
I am.
Hey, there he is. Joe's the CEO of PIN Business Network in Greenwood Village, Colorado. He offers data as a solution. And Joe, can you, in layman's language, just tell us a little bit about what you and your company do?
So we're the largest first-party data aggregator in the nation, other than Google. I built my company on a cocktail napkin 8 years ago, and we represent some of the biggest brands out in market. So companies like Under Armour, University of Denver, Powder Corp, so Copper, Eldora, Killington, Tahoe, everything from small businesses all the way up to enterprise level businesses. And we use data as a service. So we have agency services and we have marketing services that we do. But we do those by leveraging data in order to off-platform people to make it less expensive for them to get a conversion towards their particular business without the adverse cost. So we're in nearly every industry, and we were growing like mad up until I don't know, about 3 weeks ago. And then it became triage for just protecting businesses. And so as a result of that, we've been launching and building new technology to help businesses actually create commerce while they're at home. So we built a virtual system where you can buy a car online without ever leaving your house, kind of like the Carvana model, but giving power back to the dealers. We built a healthcare model that allows for hospitals and urgent cares to reach into the community and have one-on-ones or virtual conversations with people where it's HIPAA compliant, which is one of the biggest issues that's out there with some of the technology that's there. So, we're just taking this time to build new technology, and we're doing it faster. So, one of the pluses that came out of this is that we just went straight to solutions. We're an innovation company, so people bring us a problem and say, hey, I have this problem. I'm like, we can fix that, right? So we're just a bunch of guys that sit around in an office and try to figure it out. And I don't know, it's God gives you inspiration in weird ways, and I think that's kind of what He's done in our case.
That's incredible. We need to get you one of those big red buttons that say, we can fix that, you know?
Yeah, you fix that. I have one of those on my desk, actually.
So Joe, how has this impacted you and your company? I mean, obviously you guys have kicked into gear and you're running forward, but.
Yeah, so we, just to give you an idea of the impact, we do a lot of revenue, and we lost, we lost about $47 million in GMR, so gross managed revenue. Luckily, we have 71 people on the team. We only had to furlough 9. Not only did we lose that much revenue on the managed side, but as far as marketing services, we had to suspend payments to clients for up to 90 days in affected industries. So the effect on us was rather dramatic. So it's had a, we also did a 20% cut across the board for the next 90 days, anticipating that we'd have some sort of stimulus and or fundraise. We've been debt free up to this point, but we were in the middle of a $25 million raise. We shortened the scope of that pretty quickly, went back in the marketplace and have been trying to capture a smaller portion of that. And then the government, it looks like this CARES program will actually fill the gap for us, and we'll be able to bring those people that are no longer with us back onto the team and get people repaid for the 20% they took off up to this point. So it's, I always like to say that if I made a mistake, I can eat my own mistake, but the type of mistakes that are, the type of things that are happening right now is, it's just out of our control, which I think is what drives most business people crazy, is that, they're seeing a huge degradation of their ability to operate, but it's not to any fault of their own. I mean, if they would continue to operate if people were still walking through the door, and unfortunately they're not. The hysteria that's been created by this is rather unfortunate, but it's also, it's hurting every part of our economy right now. So
it really is. Joe, any words of inspiration for other, because we got business people on here from many countries, and they're looking for some kind of hope. What are you using to drive this and move your people forward?
Look, 60 years ago, we talk about in the U.S., 60 years ago, we were storming the beach in Normandy, right? And 40% of our people were dying on the beaches to fight for freedom, right? That and the evolution of society has gone towards this, this fear of something we can't see. And so I always say, look, in the eye of all this fear, I don't want to just exist. I want to live, right? I mean, I think we talked about this before, and so existing to me, sitting at home, just kind of waiting for stuff to happen to me, I'm not about that. I want to, if I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. I'm going to go down creating solutions. I'm going to go down doing what I think is just living. And I think that we all have a responsibility to the people around us to lead from the front. And if you're a business person, leading from the front means having courage, and having that courage means it might not work out, right? But don't let things happen to you. Don't put yourself in a position where life just happens to you. Make life happen, right? And it might not work out. You might fail spectacularly, but fail spectacularly trying to do something, right? So it's anyway, that's
so good. Thank you.
Joe, how for you as a leader have you been able to maintain this space of leading from the front and encouraging your people? And have you put anything new into place to keep yourself supported or your people during this time?
Yeah. So I make myself available 24 hours a day. I've answered calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. I've made several hospital visits. I've donated, I own a lot of other companies. So I've donated time and resources and from those other units that are not adversely affected by what's going on. So, and then I'm here, right? I make myself present. I'm always in front of my teams. I'm always having conversations with them. We have, one-on-ones that I do with the entire group, in every one of our companies, every day. Right. And, the bad part about that is when you're trying to work with so many, 200 plus people across all the different businesses and their families, you find yourself, getting tiring very quickly. But, I'm in this position because I think that God put me in this position. So I don't have time to be tired right now. I got to do the things that I need to do in order to make sure I support my families. And yeah, so frankly, I'm present, right? I make sure that I'm answering things and pushing people and getting them out of this funk that they get into of thinking about the sky is falling, that Chicken Little thing, right? When the sky is falling, you're paralyzed in fear. And so I don't allow the people on my team to become paralyzed in fear. And as a result, they just show up. I mean, even the people that are working from home, even the people that come in the office, like, look, I'm coming to the office every day. And I'm like, come into the office, just maintain your social distancing. And so that type of leadership has led to this amazing amount of cohesion amongst all of our teams. And I think that it's a pretty special thing. And when we come out the other end of it, I think we're going to come out something just absolutely it's going to be spectacular, right? I think that, like you said, the Phoenix is, you come out of the fire. I'm going to make sure I bring my teams out of this fire, and that, we make it through together.
Thanks, Joe. Your courage is contagious, and thanks for being with us today. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, Joe, I would just, Joe's a great example of what we opened the show with. Is he running away from something, or is he running towards something? He's definitely running towards something. It's the old adage, get out of my way, I've got somewhere I need to be. And I don't think Joe even needs to say that. People see him coming, they're just going to get out of his way because he's going somewhere. So I think that's a mindset that we want to have, and that needs to be infectious. Thanks for sharing that. All right, the next thing we want to do here today, each time we get together, we want to do one or two bottlenecks. What's a bottleneck? A bottleneck is not necessarily a bad thing. It could be an opportunity or an obstacle. It's something that's keeping you from moving forward. Like, I have too many clients. I don't know who has that problem. Well, I do know actually some people who have that problem right now, but not many of us. That could be your opportunity, but that's a bottleneck. I don't have enough equipment to do what I need to do, or an obstacle. And I think more of us feel like we might have obstacles right now. So it's either one of those, but it's a bottleneck. It's a thing that keeps you from moving forward in your business. And I'd love to have somebody step up and be transparent. This has to be a place every Monday morning where we kind of get the start this week, get off on the right foot. And it needs to be a place where we can start the week by being transparent. And we use this phrase in 3 to 5 Club all the time. You need a place where you can say 3 magic words. I don't know. Or depending on the circumstances, I am scared, or WTF, or, there's a lot of things. And that means, what the fascinating, in case you wondered. So we just need a place where we can let our hair down and be real and say, I don't have this figured out. I am a recovering John Wayne rugged individualist. For my first 5 or 6 businesses, every time I printed a business card, I thought I had it figured out, and I didn't want anybody to know any different, even though I might have been waking up in cold sweats in the middle of the night and dying inside saying, what in God's name have I done this time? It took a while to get over that. So let's not be that. Let's live in community, and let's be safe with one another and say, here's something I would love the wisdom of crowds to solve. So when we have this bottleneck, it works basically like this. We're going to have you share and be thinking about it. If you want to jump in, we're going to have you share for 1 minute, maybe a little bit longer. Here's my bottleneck. And then we're going to take a minute or two just to ask you questions. What is it just to clarify, to make sure we understand your bottleneck. And try not to give solutions during that time. It's really hard, but just ask questions. Don't give solutions cleverly disguised as questions. Like, do you think you should do X? That's a yes or no. And then the third piece of that will be us raining on them with ideas. And we'll take those both via chat, and we'll take them as well as just hit your space bar. If you're on mute, a great way to do this technology, Sam Taggart showed us this. Just hit your space bar, the big long black bar in the middle of your keyboard, to unmute yourself for just a second while you're talking. Then when you let go, it puts you back again. So you can do that without having to go through the mute unmute thing. So 1 minute to share the bottleneck, a couple of minutes to ask questions, and 3 minutes to rain down on that person with suggestions. And when we get to that part, they're not allowed to talk, because they're not allowed to throw water on our great ideas. Okay, anybody got one? Well, let me say that differently. who would like to share one of the many bottlenecks we all have? Because I probably have 10 I could share. And I'm really good with awkward silence, by the way.
I'd like to share.
We got one. Okay, give us 1 minute, give us your bottleneck, and then we'll ask you a couple of minutes worth of questions.
I don't know if anybody can help, but we're sure going to throw it out there. My husband and I are home inspectors. Real estate's kind of on hold right now. We're thinking that maybe we're going to have to reinvent our lives. He's an engineer and I'm a nurse. And we started our business. He started it 4 years ago and I joined him a year ago. You know, we're closer to retirement than some. And we are actually thinking that maybe we're going to have to recreate ourselves. And we're looking at, since family lives out of state, more mobile ways of income. And we just don't know what to do or where to go. And we're okay financially right now for a short time. Any help, any ideas?
All right, so both hit your space bar as well as ask things on the chat feature as well. And I'll read your chats if you don't want to hit the space bar, but hit the space bar and ask Sherry very short, clear questions. Don't tell stories about how you got to your question. Just ask your question very succinctly, and we'll give Sherry a couple of minutes to answer those so we can clarify what her bottleneck is. Okay. This is
What
where the
city?
wisdom
What
of
city
Christ
are you
is.
in?
We're in Colorado.
What type of engineer is your husband?
Mostly mechanical, design.
And why do you say that real estate's on hold right now?
The state has put it as a critical, it's essential, but they're only telling people to only work with clients that critically have to buy a house or sell a house.
That's pretty much shut down.
Is your husband still licensed?
So he's not a PE.
Are you a licensed nurse right now, active?
I am. I'm an RN.
Pádraig here from Ireland. Can I just ask you, have you got a passion in life that you would have loved to pursue that you never really thought of or didn't think could happen for you?
I'll have to think about that. And so I'm sorry, my husband would be here with me, but he just took a phone call. He's actually been doing some teaching for home inspectors and he's on a call with that company right now. I'm going to have to think on that one of as far as a passion.
Would you be interested in training home inspectors?
And that's actually, yes. He is actually on a call right now with a company that we trained through, and they have brought him on board to teach just before all this happened. And so they've had to transition to computer teaching. So he's only done 2 trainings so far, and they're on a brainstorming session right now. So we're wondering if that would be an avenue. However, then he'd be working for somebody else, which not sure that's what we wanted, but maybe that's a door that's opening.
When the situation gets better, like after this coronavirus thing, is this not the work, home inspecting, you would want to do?
Well, we thought it was going to be. It isn't necessarily a passion to home inspect as much as it is a passion to be self-employed, an entrepreneur. So we could continue it, yes. And we put ourselves in a position financially in the last year to live on much less than we used to.
So would it be appropriate? Would it be appropriate to say that you really just need something to get you through to continue doing that?
That could be, yes. But we want to keep our options open. You know, are we being led to recreate? We don't really know at this point. We just kind of turn around in a circle and hope we make the right decisions and do the right thing.
Somebody asked, are you working as a nurse right now? You're registered, but are you working as one?
I'm sorry, I have my chat off because I'm on my, not off, but I can't see it all because I'm on just my phone.
That's all right.
I am not working as a nurse now. I quit about 14 months ago because of the frustration of the business world of nursing, and joined my husband. Okay. His business had taken off enough.
Okay, so I think we've got enough to get us going. The Wisdom of Crowds doesn't need every bit of information. We just need to have a good overview, and then this will be a lot of fun to see how many great ideas come out of this from people who know nothing about home inspection. That's the joy of this. We're all ignorant enough to have really great insight. It's part of the beauty of the Wisdom of Crowds. When you get a diverse enough group together, you come up with a better answer than 10 experts would. If we had 10 people who were inspectors here, we probably wouldn't come up with anywhere near as good of answers as we're going to have right now. So let's rain on her with some ideas on how Robin and her husband can move forward. And Robin, at this point, you're not allowed to respond to any of this because you're not allowed to say that our idea doesn't work because you've already tried it. Because guess what? If 10 people tell you to do the same thing, you might want to go and try it an 11th time. So let's rain her with ideas, and I'll read them off a chat. But if you got them and you want to hit your space bar, give those to Robin as well, and she can write these down, but they're also on our recording. They'll be on our website. So Rob, let's take it away.
I would start with just making lists. Make a list of the purposes that you want to fulfill. Make a list of the constraints that you see at the moment, and make a list of the resources that you have. And by resources, I mean not just things like money, but things like what you're good at and the skills you have and the abilities you have and the people around you as well.
Somebody else said, discover a big why. Take the time to find out what fuels you, because if you want to be an entrepreneur, find out what your big why is behind that. What is it that you want from being an entrepreneur, and use that to fuel things.
This idea would be to get you to where this gets passed and you can continue an inspection. Here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, there's multiple companies that are private companies out doing the swab for the test. And you might see what it would take for you as a nurse to be able to position yourself to start that quick private company to go out and do personal, do that testing for people individually.
And your husband could create his own inspection training business and stay entrepreneurial. He doesn't need to join somebody else. That was somebody else's suggestion.
Well, I think one of the things I would like to say is that since you actually quit your job 17 months ago to join your husband's company because he was actually thriving. So if you have actually likes, since now that you have experience, I think this is probably a really good time to actually look at if you guys want to continue this and how you can make it better. That way you can actually take some time off also and do the other stuff that you want to do. But if you have enjoyed this, time is going to change. I mean, it's not going to be like this forever. I mean, it's like a matter of maybe it's weeks, a month or two or whatever. People are going to buy houses. I need to buy a house. So I think it's a really good time to just evaluate how 17 months were. And if those were good and you like that aspect of being self-employed, then this is the time to see, okay, how much better we can do.
Somebody else said maybe transition to becoming a real estate appraiser, or maybe do both. Ramp up your marketing. This is a great time to actually do a lot of relationship marketing and stay in front of your real estate agents and create classes for them. They have a lot of downtime right now as well. So create mastermind classes for them to be a part of. Stay in front of people when nobody else is. Everybody else is hunkered down and waiting for this to get over with. Man, stay in front of those people. They're not doing anything either right now. So get a Zoom call going to help train real estate agents on how to see these things and how to help their clients.
Chuck, Peter had said earlier, looking to do some telenursing right now, which is what we're all having to do. They don't want to show up in the offices or at the hospital. So, you know, you can drop back to your nursing practice and do it from home.
And Chuck is going to address this in a few minutes, Robin, but if it's just a cash flow issue for a few months, we're going to share a lot of resources that may just get you guys through until you can be more viable face-to-face again.
And somebody else said an online inspector training business, there it comes again, might be a direction to explore. You could take the time you have right now to build a network of members that want to learn and adopt to distance learning so you can offer training from anywhere. Look at loom.com. It's a place to help you create really simple screenshot videos where you could actually put together a real great little series of videos on how to do inspections and create a program that other inspectors could actually learn from and buy potentially, but certainly build an online community with that. There's an opportunity there as well. Look at taking inspection into less affected markets. Let's see, somebody else said reach out to the realtors you've worked with in the past. Yep. People are still buying houses even in the difficult time. That's a great one. It's from Kathy Budd, and that just speaks to all of us. Right now, our first blush is going to be to hunker down, to cocoon, to just move away from things. And no better time right now than to reach out to everybody we know and continue to build those relationships with those people. Reach out to realtors you worked with in the past and people like that, and just say hello and figure out how you can offer them some comfort and some just stay in front of them. The two things that create marketing are really just very simple: recency and frequency. How recently did I talk to you, and how frequently do I talk to you? And it's both and. So be recent and frequent. This is a time with a lot of time on your hands. Go after those people. Somebody else said you could create CE classes for realtors and charge for the CE credits, either online or offline.
Chuck, if we have somebody else. Wonder if we have somebody else to present a bottleneck. And thanks, Robin, for putting yourself out there. I really appreciate it today.
Actually, I don't know if we have time for another one. Maybe we do. Let's see. Do we have time for another one?
It's your call.
Yeah, I think I want to make sure we get into the funding today. So we'll take the second bottleneck as a group bottleneck. This will be for all of us. We've got some information. Again, we've been buried for the last number of days in getting all of this morass figured out. How do we fund ourselves? And I think there's two questions right now, and I'll preface the two questions with an assumption. I built 12 businesses in 8 industries on 4 continents, and I've made a lot of mistakes. And the biggest one I ever made was about cash. We built a business from 2 million to 9 million in 2.5 years and had to sell it in a fire sale. Even though our accountant was saying we were highly profitable, we had no money. And what I learned was the faster you grow, the less cash you have. But it also turned me on to understanding cash as a thing. And when people say cash is king, it's really true. Cash is always king, but it's king now more than ever. So there's 2 things we have to be thinking about more than anything this week, next week, and basically in the next 2 to 3 weeks. Number 1, how do I preserve the cash I have? And number 2, how do I get more cash that I don't have right now? So those are 2 things that we should be focused on as much as anything else right now, is preserving cash and getting cash. And the first thing I'll say is that you should talk to a reputable banker. And I wish I didn't have to put that out there, but I've worked with some of the giant corporation banks that frankly, it took me 3 or 4 years to get away from, but I finally did. And work with smaller banks and credit unions who are much more likely to work with you as a human being and work with you personally. I'm going to ask Shelly Doan to unmute and introduce herself. Shelly is someone that we've known from Key Bank here in Colorado. They're a regional bank, so they may not work for you nationally, but she's a great example of someone who can be assistance to you. And Shelly and her group are trying to decipher this mess as well. If you don't want to decipher it, talk to people like Shelly. So Shelly, introduce yourself.
Hi there. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. It looks like my video is frozen. So, so as Chuck said, I'm Shelly Doan. I work with Key Bank, and Yeah, this has been a crazy ride the last couple weeks. So in terms of cash flow preservation, what I've been doing and what everyone here should be doing is working with your banker, anyone and everyone that has a line of credit. Just as a precautionary measure, what we've done is maxed out that line and put the money into the checking account. We're also working diligently on putting any existing loans into deferral status and also looking to increase the limit on your lines. Those are actions that we're taking independent of this recent CARES Act. And I won't go into too much detail about the CARES Act because I know there's a lot of information out there. Essentially what that is, it's an SBA guaranteed loan for the amount of 2.5 times of your monthly salary or your monthly payroll. And then based on qualifying expenses in general, if you stay business as usual, that loan will eventually turn into a grant. The SBA will send to the banks the money and pay it off on your behalf.
And Shelley, the fancy name for this particular piece of the stimulus is the Paycheck Protection Program, if you want to look it up, PPP.
Exactly. Yep, and I have some information. Feel free to ping me if you want the details of it. But what I'd like to do is just kind of share some sort of behind the scenes background information on that, just as you're going through the process of applying for it, kind of why you may or may not experience some pain points. So for those that don't know, an SBA loan, particularly a 7A loan, it's a loan from a bank to you, essentially with rich Uncle Sam co-signing the loan. But the important thing to remember, in a former life, my job was to collect from the SBA when those loans went bad. That process isn't a matter of calling the SBA and saying, hey, it didn't work out, and the SBA saying, oh, that sucks, where do you want us to send the check? It's a very lengthy process. There are hundreds, maybe thousands of people that sit in an office in California, and their sole job is to make sure they don't pay out on those guarantees. So that's created a weird dynamic between banks and SBA, where if you have a default and you go to collect on that default, the SBA will say, oh, look here on form 912, line 7, they checked no. And if they checked no, you were supposed to fill out the addendum to 912 and you didn't, and so you don't have a guarantee anymore. So that's created a lot of hesitance over the years in banks in doing these SBA loans, because we're scared as lenders that is that guarantee really going to be there when we need it the most, right? So so as you're going through any SBA loan, just kind of keep that in the back of your mind, that that's kind of the perspective that the banks are coming from. We have to make sure that we dot every I and cross every T and get every form filled out perfect, or we won't have that guarantee.
So Shelley,
now that said,
go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
This new program, the messaging that we're being kind of given, the messaging that I'm hearing from KeyBank is dotting the I's and crossing the T's isn't nearly as important as getting money out the door, which is really unusual. But that is really the focus. That's what we're hearing from Congress. That's what we're hearing from regulators. There's a lot of talk. If you're bored some night, Google the Troubled Asset Relief TDR program. So basically what it is, the government has kind of eased up on restrictions in terms of what we can and can't do as lenders. If you look like you're starting to crash and burn and we give you money anyway, historically that was a big no-no, and something that the regulators sort of frowned upon and discouraged lenders from doing. They've eased up on a lot of those restrictions now and said, if they were teetering on the brink and you give them a little bit to get them through this, so be it. So there's a very different messaging coming from the SBA, from the regulators, from the auditors, saying the most important thing is to make this easy, seamless, and quick. So that's a kind of a culture shock for all of us, but very heartening to hear. And I can only speak for KeyBank, but I suspect most other SBA lenders are also following suit in saying, let's figure this program out. I was on call called Saturday and Sunday. In the last 24 hours, we've developed a streamlined digital portal so that we can get as many applications through as quickly as possible. We're figuring out the minimum amount of documentation required to keep our guarantee. The last thing we want, since this is a loan, you have to fulfill some requirements and then it gets converted to a grant. We need to make sure we understand what those requirements are so that it does actually get forgiven.
Okay,
and we're
Shelley,
not saddling these people with loans.
Yeah, sorry, we've got limited time here, so I'm going to give people your contact information, and then for any of you who are not in this area, find yourself an SBA loan officer. So if you want to just put that in the chat feature, how they can connect with you. I want to highlight, we've uncovered probably 25 or 30 different ways for you to preserve cash and get cash. And we're going to put that in something called a surthrival guide for business owners, not a survival, because we want you to thrive. So it's a little bit of both. We want you to get out of this and thrive. So it's a funding surthrival guide for business owners that will be published toward the end of this week. Some of the things that are going to go in there is $340 million in Google ads for people who are already doing Google ads, $100 million from Facebook in cash grants to eligible small businesses. There's a EIDL program, which is an economic injury disaster loan process as part of the stimulus package. You can apply for a loan. You can actually get a $10,000 advance in certain circumstances. And even if you don't qualify for the loan, every indication we've been giving is that you're not going to have to pay back the $10,000. You got to think about the federal student loan program deferments. There's a thing called the payroll tax credit and deferral of interest payroll taxes. That's another thing your accountant should be all over for you. But some of the things that Shelley said up front, number one is if you have a line of credit, exercise it. Because banks their computers will actually take it away from you in some cases if you haven't used it in a while. You think you're doing a good job because you haven't used it in a year. Well, that means they're not making any money off of it. They're going to put it somewhere else. So take it out, put it in your savings account. And then if you don't have one, go get one if you can. And don't be afraid to ask for a fairly sizable amount. The bank will tell you whether you will qualify or not. You got the $1,200 checks coming to you. Unemployment is actually now opened up to people who are partly unemployed, as well as independent contractors and other people like that. Think about refinancing your mortgage. I would wait a few weeks on that because there's such a rush to do it that you're paying more fees than you probably should. But that's another way to preserve cash. So we've just put together a litany. That's probably half or a third of the things, and we need to go into them in much more detail on how to preserve cash and how to get cash. So we want to bring that to you next time. But we're also going to put this together as a surthrival guide that we'll put out there as a formal PDF document for you. We think we'll have it by the end of this week, probably earlier than that. Sandy, I'll let you break in here on this as well. You have some information on how people can connect on to get that.
Yes, so you can email us, and I put this in the chat at grow, GROW, at the number 3, the word TO, the number 5 club.com. So grow at 325club.com to get that document. And also 3 to 5 clubs are a place where we can do more bottlenecks. We can help each other at a greater level. We can dig into community. So if you're interested in virtually attending one of the many 3 to 5 clubs that we have going on, email us there too, and we'll get you into a club. We hope that you'll share this call. We hope that you'll invite people into the community so we can collaborate and help one another.
And just FYI, if you're not familiar with the chat, there's a chat function at the bottom of your screen, and Shelley put her contact information in that chat if you want to follow up with her.
Great.
Do we have time for BFOs?
Yeah.
Let's just take a minute. Anybody have a blinding flash of the obvious, like, oh my gosh, I didn't know that existed, or yeah, I can do that, or this is how I got inspired today.
Quick popcorn.
Yeah,
so you get as many people in as possible.
Just pop it right in.
No stories, just a quick blinding flash of the obvious. 2 or 3 words.
Peter said,
joy overcomes fear.
Ha. It's awesome.
I think I liked it, preserve the cash and how to actually get more cash, even in these times. Yeah.